Hello, Laura. How are you today?
I'm doing fine.
Thank you for coming, and we're eager to hear a little bit about your life and your ministry. To begin with, Laura, tell us a little bit about how you got to know and join the Sisters of St. Louis. That's always a very interesting fact with everyone. And then what attracted a Dublin girl to a religious vocation like this, like the Sisters of St. Louis? Can you just briefly?
Yeah, I started in St. Louis Primary School in the 4th grade. And that's how I got connected with the Sisters of St. Louis. And in the 5th grade, I had a sister, Pierre. I also had her in the 7th grade again. And she was very significant in my life. She had a creativity about her and an openness that I'd never found before. So she always stayed in my heart. And I kept connected with her many, many years until she died some years ago.
Okay.
So Pierre was very significant in my life. And then I went to Monaghan, to the boarding school there, because high school wasn't provided at that time, except privately. And that's when I got more contact with more Sisters of St. Louis, and really loved being there. And one of the people who inspired me a lot was Gabriel Mary. She was a tremendous influence, very real and very practical and loving. So that was very good. And so they were the contacts mostly that I had. Sister Madeleine also, who had been our principal, kept contact with me after I left Monaghan. And I had to stay out for a few years because I'd had rheumatic fever. So then when I was okay again, they called me to say, would I come? So I entered in October 1955. Mm-hmm. So that was my first connection.
There are always wonderful angels and wonderful mentors in our journeys of life. So you left your home country of Ireland to come then to California. I'm sure, like most of the others, you did not volunteer for California. You were sent. And when you got here, you started your teaching ministry. How was it leaving home, leaving Ireland, and coming to a place where you actually didn't volunteer to come to?
It was hard leaving family. I'm the eldest of the family, and so the family was quite young, and at that time we knew we would be here for 7 years before we would go back. And so 7 years in the life of young children is huge.
Yes.
So my youngest brother was 7 when I left, and he was 14 when I came back. Another was 14 and was 21. So it was very difficult. We kept up writing, but keeping connected. And then, of course, it was very hard leaving my mother. I'm the only girl, the eldest, and that was particularly hard.
The eldest of how many?
There were altogether 7.
Wow.
And a very significant event was that when I was 10, and my sister, we had one sister, was 6. We were at school on Friday and played on Saturday, and she died on Sunday night of meningitis. And so that left a great effect on me and my mother's grief, which still has me in bereavement ministry. So
that's right.
That happened when I was 10.
Very hard, very hard. And then for the next approximately 17 years, you had a teaching ministry. Well, first you had elementary school at St. Bede's in La Cañada in 1958 when you actually came to California.
Right.
And then was that the only elementary school?
Yes.
Yes.
I was just there 5 years.
5.
It was very demanding there because there was a high level of demand in terms of science on account of JPL, the science place being close by. Malua was the person who supported me, mentored me into the teaching and everything there. So that the community support was what helped settle in.
Okay, and then the next 17 years you actually taught in Louisville High School and in Bishop Amat.
Right.
Give us a little flavor of the high school environment and the subjects you taught. And were you happy there other than being in an elementary school? Did the high school environment it was better for you at that time than the
I liked
elementary?
each place
You liked each
when I
place.
was there. You know, the high school difference of the age and just the dynamic. I was just 2 years here in Louisville, high school, 63 to 65, and that was a whole new world and very good. Then I was moved to Bishop Amat. And that was a very different and wonderful experience. It was a huge high school, boys and girls, which we didn't have here. And I was working with, I think it was 7 or 8 different communities of sisters. So that was a very, very powerful experience for me.
Very good experience, intercongregational, and then the boys and girls.
And I taught math and religion in all of my high school teaching. Okay. So in both places and shared the departments and that. So yeah, that was I came back here and then 70, I was here from 70 until 80.
Yes, and I remember you as one of my math teachers in Louisville High School.
That's right.
I always remember you there. With your other name, Sister
Remigius.
Remigius, yes.
We forget about that.
We forget those older names, I know. And then in the 1970s, you started a very interesting ministry with some of our other sisters, interfaith and ecumenical programs. How was that, and how did you come about that from your high school?
Actually, what brought me into that was that when I came back here in 70, Sister Maura asked me to teach world religions and Christian churches. And that's how I got in to world religions and Christian churches. And then out of that got contact with the groups. So from its very beginning in the late 70s, I was part of the Catholic Jewish Women's Dialogue.
Okay. Which
we still meet 43 years later.
Really?
Oh yeah, every November 11th we meet.
Wow.
So that was significant. Others, Margaret McHugh and Mary Rice
yes.
were the 3 of us who were there, of our sisters. Later on, like after they retired from teaching, Malou and Antonia came into it. But
I see.
We were there from that time on. And then in more recent years, I'm part of the Ecumenical and Interfaith Commission of the diocese. We've had a Catholic evangelical dialogue between Loyola Marymount and Fuller Seminary, and that's a monthly meeting that we have that has gone on all that number of years. So there are 2 big commitments that I have.
And they're wonderful enrichment movements that have enriched your journey in life. That's wonderful. And then in 1980, you moved into parish ministry at St. Paschal Baylon in Thousand Oaks. Then also St. Anthony Claret in Anaheim.
Right.
And in 1986 to the DePaul Center as directors of retreat and bereavement programs. Share some of your experiences of that. Wonderful, very wonderful ministries in those areas. And how did you connect with that? It's quite a lot.
Well, I really enjoyed moving into the parish ministries. I'd had my sabbatical at Catholic U, and there was encouraged to move into adult work because very little was being done to bring people up to power after the council. And so that was a great opportunity. I loved it. I worked in RCIA, I worked in scripture study, and then I was asked to develop bereavement programs of support and took training there with others for that. So that was very, very wonderful. I had a great relationship with the people I loved. There's a different dynamic. It isn't as structured as school teaching.
Right.
So it suited me very well. And then I moved to Anaheim and did the same thing there. And moved a lot with the Hispanic community because we had renewal in both groups and worked that way. And then I moved into retreat work. Down in Orange, first of all, and then was asked to go up to DePaul Centre, which had been a junior seminary, and they were opening it up as a retreat house. And I was asked to come and develop liturgy training programs and retreats, and then I was able to develop bereavement programs there, which we trained people in for years.
It's fascinating how your early ministries were building blocks to other ministries. Each one built and gave you the enrichment and the experience you needed for your next.
Yeah, that's true.
That's very interesting how that worked. And because of that, you were, and you have been, and you still are, very successful in some of those ministries because you have a lot in your background that helped you step from one to the other. And very needed ministries today.
Yeah. I never think of it as successful, just more or less where I'm meant to be. Yeah, and once I went into the bereavement ministry, took the training in hospice, took the training in Claremont, whatever form it takes, I know that's for me. That's where I'm meant to be there. So
Yes.
at this point, I just do days of retreat for people in grief and work one-on-one with people. I don't do the big programs anymore. They're being done in other groups.
I see. Very good. Well, we've kind of covered a lot of your life, but we're coming now to one of our main questions and interest for telling our story is your involvement with our Sisters of St. Louis Associates. And they began in 1984. I hear that Sister Maura Byron, after an ELM meeting where they suggested that the sisters would go back to their regions and try to gain some kind of interest in attracting lay people, some type of association with us.
Well, actually,
large on that?
Well, it wasn't so much attracting. What appealed to me, which we'd already heard said before that, was that Vatican II challenged us to share our charisms in alternate ways. Before that, we mostly had been doing it with people in community, which is religious. And it was a new thing to be asked to share our charism with people outside religious life and have them bring it into their world. And that spoke to me very, very, very strongly. So when Sister Maura came back from that meeting and called for volunteers, a number of us volunteered and explored what was already happening, but most of it was almost like other religious formation programs. And that's when Sister Dorothy was out here with us.
Sister Dorothy,
our Superior General at the time. And she suggested that we each of us invite one person, one lay person that we knew to join us in the coming year and develop a program. And then actually, it's Bridget Clare, who was at the meeting also, she proposed that we look at the new option that the Vatican Council brought to us of adult training in the RCIA, the Rite of Christian Initiation, because the three of us were working in it at that time, and adapt that to associates and have sponsors and that.
So that was providential that you were already involved in something like that.
Right.
And it was providential that Sister Dorothy McCluskey also inspired people to do more.
So that started in 1984. In the first year, we just invited women we knew or taught with or knew. And then after that, we invited anybody else, women and men. But the men who have come in as part of couples.
Yes.
The women, some are part of couples, but some are single, some are widowed, some are divorced. It's different. But the men have mainly come as part of couples.
That's very interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I suppose yes,
makes
because we're a
sense
women's congregation.
That's right.
And I wonder if that happens in the men's congregations. I wonder if the men bring their wives. Or, that would be interesting to know. So talk us a little bit about some of the details of the associates and who was the actual first lay person that you invited?
Oh, the first person I invited was Marilyn Moore. One of our teachers. She was a French teacher at Louisville High School.
Yes, one of my teachers, although I didn't have French, but I think she had me for something.
Right. So Marilyn was one of the first people, and each person invited one. Not everybody stayed, but that's how we worked and developed. And by that time, I was down in Anaheim and invited people down in that area, and the Schaefers came. They were very significant at the beginning. So, yeah, and from the beginning, we worked as with the associates working with us on our leadership team. So we've had leadership teams all the time with sisters and associates being part of it. And for me, it's still the same. The major thing is passing on our charism. That's what attracted me to it, and that is what keeps me there, passing on the charism of that they may be one and called to bring about help bring about a world healed, unified and transformed. And we speak to that all the time and work towards creating community. And in terms of a way of life, we have 3 elements. We've asked people to pray, and we didn't add anything on purposely. Some communities asked them to pray the office that they used to pray, but we asked them to pray the Sunday readings, and that's been a really important part of the Lectio. And the second was building community, which is very much part of our vocation in every aspect of their lives, their work, their family, their community, the associates. And the third was to commit themselves to a ministry which was an expression of our charism. A lot of the people who come are in many ministries.
Yes.
And we just said, just choose one each year that you see as an expression of oneness or of healing, of unifying. And they make that renewal each year.
And we forgot to mention that the California region, or the United States Brazil region, as it is called now, was one of the first.
It was the first.
To initiate an association movement.
An associates movement.
Program,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah, it was the first, and then they asked us, both from Nigeria and Ireland, forget the sister's name, could we share what we've done? So we sent them our materials. Now, obviously, they developed them differently. But yes, the California region was the first to respond and get started in that.
And some of our associates are active and come to meetings and different social events or talks, but others are in a prayer group. Can you explain that?
Well, it's people who were in the formation program, made their commitments, and then for one or other reason their lives changed. Some of them, their jobs changed, they moved out of state. Others, their life commitment was more demanding. Others were ill and not able to attend, but they still wanted connection. So what we came up with was a connection which is it's associate prayer partners. It's not just anybody else. It's people who've come through our program. And we ask that they pray the Sunday readings, and we developed a prayer that we've set out for their daily prayer. And we invite them if they want to attend our annual retreat. 1 or 2 of them have. And then when there are big events, especially our funerals or people sick, and that, we invite them to participate. So that's been an ongoing event. It's different from what other communities do, and sometimes people wonder why. But because we developed our program purposely with a meal ahead of time so people would get to know one another before they came to the meeting, that causes that people need to be in contact with who's coming and all of that. So that's why this adjustment was made.
Very good. What are some of the difficulties, or have been some of the difficulties, or dilemmas maybe?
Traffic.
Traffic. Oh, for people to, yes, and distance.
Yeah, well, the traffic and the distance, we used to go around to all the different communities that people that we lived, our sisters were in.
Yes.
And we'd have our meetings there.
For example, some in San Gabriel Valley or Anaheim.
Everywhere.
That was done at the beginning.
Oh, yes, that was done. But gradually, as there were fewer people in the communities and as the traffic got worse, that wasn't continued. But Sister Margaret McHugh, who was down in San Pedro, was a very strong member and brought a lot of people in. And we would go down there for meetings. But it was a very long journey. The traffic got worse coming up from San Pedro. So that made it more difficult. We even tried to have two parts of formation programs. We'd one down south and one up here. And it was also difficult because while those people would come up here occasionally, people from the valley don't drive down there.
No.
So they didn't like that only meeting occasionally. Some other communities, they meet all just in local communities, and once a year they meet in a large way and make their commitment. We haven't done that. We've always met more regularly. So, yeah, the distance has been a huge factor. And then people's lives, we have traditionally met on a Saturday, and people often say we should have more younger people in. And when younger people come in, their children's demands on a Saturday usually eliminate them really participating. So it has been mostly people whose children are older who've been able to be with us.
We still have some people coming a distance. Celeste comes from, where is she coming from?
Well, now she's over in the Monrovia area, so it's not so far. No, the farthest coming people are Dana and Maggie from Fullerton and Brea, down in Orange County. They would be, and sometimes from San Luis Obispo and Farrelly.
That's right.
It comes down. And then there are some others who try to make our annual retreat. Irv, who's now beyond that, he would drive down from Clovis every year, and Gain when she could. So people like to keep a connection, but they're not always able to keep coming to meetings.
Yes, I can see that. And I think the other, I wouldn't say difficulty, but dilemma is when our sisters have left an area where they were teaching or in parish ministry, they're not there to invite or get to know the people, the lay people. And that's going to be a difficulty later on too.
Well,
somehow I think the lay people are going to have to somehow, and I think they have. Already that has been happening.
We have been having associate sponsor for years.
That's right.
And that's where their future is. The question has come up in recent years of what happens when there are no more sisters around, or that they can't be around very often. And so that's being worked on, and the leadership has taken over more among the associates. They still need an awful lot of support because there are things not understood about why things are done. So the good thing is the person, Kevin Neri, who is coordinator now, he and I have met for a whole year, monthly, carefully, to try and pass on understandings. And it's wonderful how he has picked it up. Passing it on to others is a much more challenging idea,
Tell us a little bit about the formation program, how the associates apply to be associates.
We send out a letter to sisters and associates about a new formation program starting and ask if they would sponsor. People come in to us sponsored.
By either sisters
either
or
a sister
lay people.
Or an associate.
And the program is about a 2-year program?
It's not as long as that now.
Oh.
It's a shorter time. And that's even been looked at what's possible and what's necessary. It's mainly because people already are people of faith. The main focus is sharing the St. Louis history, the St. Louis charism, St. Louis ministries, and how this can impact what associates can move in the coming out of the grounding of our charism.
Right.
And we always send out a copy of our chapter documents, the parts apart from our government part, to the associates after each chapter and go over the materials with them.
And some of the themes I think that they have really enjoyed or admired is the care of the earth, justice and peace. Can you think of a couple other things that What are some of the other themes that they have, or studies? For example, in a week now, we're going to have a Justice and Peace meeting, workshop, talk by someone very, very knowledgeable about care of the earth and the cosmos, or the universe. What are some of the things that they have really commented on that they have really enjoyed and been successful in?
Well, the ones you mentioned, but also it was very important for us way back to share with them on the documents of the Vatican Council, because a lot of people haven't got that background that we were blessed to receive in '65 when the program started with the Paulists. A number of us went there every week to go through all the documents, and very few people had that option. So actually Malua and Antonia took different times to go through different parts of the documents. I did some of them also. We still need to do that again. There are still a lot of people, among whom are associates, who haven't an awareness of what that opened up to us in terms of church. So that's really important. And the church's role in the times, that's really important that we look into that too.
They have a few of the associates that I have met and got to know have interesting ministries. That they've impressed me with their ministries and how, at their workplace or wherever, they are constantly being reflective about the charism that they are trying to imbibe, and that's been very, very good.
Yeah, for example, one of our associates, Gain, who was is a marriage and family counsellor, does marvellous work in it, and she's moved up to San Luis Obispo, a good distance away in recent years, but she has a small office on her property, and she said when we passed out the image of a world healed, unified and transformed, she put it up on her office, and she said every time she walks in and is going to work with a child, she mostly works with the children and sometimes their parents, she says, this is what I'm about, bringing about a world healed, unified. So that's very real for her as it is for a lot of people.
And it's very important in today's world. My goodness, how could we not? So our founders and foundress have really inspired a wonderful legacy that we are trying to continue, and how appropriate and how long-lasting what they were doing and how they founded our congregation has come down to us today, and is very significant and important for today, and very much alive.
And we've had regularly input shared on our founders, on our charism. Bridget Clare has given many different parts of our story and history, shared them with the associates, and they keep asking, could she come back and share something else? She's not quite up to that at this point, but Judy has shared very deeply also about St. Louis charism.
And Elizabeth Begolder did a good job too. She had a lot of the French origin and history.
Right, yeah. And people came up here to visit her.
That's right.
Elizabeth was not the kind who'd come and give talks. She was wonderful to work with.
Yes. That's wonderful. Is there anything that we've left out of your rich ministry background and also about the associates that you would like to add? The future of our associates that you've mentioned.
My greatest concern and hope is that the focus will continue to be living the charism and creating community. It can get into being an administrative event. That's not its main event at all. But it's hard for business people to understand that sometimes. And so, to me, the question always needs to be asked, whether we're meeting in a small group, in a leadership, in a regular group, is how is this creating community? How is it bringing about healing, unifying and transforming? And it seems to me that we need many ways of continuing to come out of that. And the prayer that needs and involves.
That's wonderful. Thank you very, very much. I appreciate your sharing with us today. And we pray that the movement that you were a part of and still are will have many years of enrichment for our society and for our world. Thank you very much, Laura.
You're welcome.